up here to speak.
Thank you, sir. What's up, y'all? What it do? Okay. As everyone has already said, I'm extremely nervous. So I'm incredibly nervous about this. I'm appreciative of it. So Ed is also on our board for Dream Defenders. So, if anybody wants to drive to Florida and come to a freedom school and sleep on a pew, you can be on our board. So, that's pretty much the threshold. So I want to thank Ed. Also, Ed knows this, but I like music, and so I want to welcome that here. A song that has been repeated in my head since I've been here, just a quick one, and then that will make me less nervous, and I will do what I hope I've been asked to do and get out of the way. By and by, when the morning comes, all the saints of God gather home. We will tell the story of how we overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by. One more time. By and by, when the morning comes, all the saints of God gather home. We will tell the story of how we overcome, and we'll understand it better by and by. Some harmony in there. It's good. I first want to thank Ed and the Fund for Democratic Communities team for this invitation. I want to thank each of you for the knowledge and the vision that you embody and that you bring to this room and to the world. I want to shout out the members of my team that are present. Rachel, who is a dynamic, a visionary organizer, and has come in and really been a big part of our evolution, our survival to this point. I want to thank Omar and Talissa, who are some of our newest members, but they're not new to the movement, and so we're appreciative of those top draft picks we now have. We can count on our team. Also, the folks in this room, too many to name, that have loved on us, that have counseled us, that have supported us, that have defended us, that have chided us. I want to say thank you. Lastly, I want to honor the fact that I wouldn't be here, blessed with this chance to speak with any of you all, without the work of an entire organization of people who do work that is unspoken of and unknown sometimes. So I've been tasked with the duty of talking about movement building. We've been tasked. And as Melissa said, that's kind of a huge question that we feel like is way too big for our shoulders. So for the purposes of this time, I'll engage the prompt through the lens of the development and the redevelopment now, the building and the rebuilding of our organization, the Dream Defenders. I think this will serve a dual purpose in reclaiming our story from the ethos that media can create, and to affirm the genius of some of our strategies that we've done kind of unconsciously and some pretty consciously. I'd also like to end my time with you all and illuminate some of the questions that are bouncing around our heads, some of the things that keep us up at night, so that you all can have a more clear understanding of how you can help us, not just in this time, but afterwards. So for those that do not know, we were founded in 2012 after a death in an apartment complex on a rainy evening in Sanford, Florida. As we've all come to know, a neighborhood watchman decided to leave his home and take a life. We were underorganized. We were searching for something. We were angry. We were righteous. We were confused. We were energetic. We were uncompromising. Afterwards, we went to every college we could in the state of Florida to recruit. Many of the founders of Dream Defenders, of which we have over 30, were graduates or current students at Florida colleges. And so it was the low-hanging fruit for us. We were able to go to any college we wanted to. I'm a Florida A&M Rattler, the #1 HBCU in the entire world. And so, hey, we got to be together. We got to be together. So, what a place to help start an organization like ours. And we would go to any school: University of Florida, the University of Central Florida, Miami-Dade Community College, Santa Fe Community College, Florida Gulf Coast, Bethune-Cookman. We went to any school that would listen to us, and we were talking about the criminalization of Black, Latino, and poor communities. And we would say that it's hard to be poor in this country. It's hard to be Black. It's hard to be an immigrant in this country. We would say it's deadly to be poor in this country, to be Black in this country. We would say it was expensive to be poor in this country, that has found a way to monetize every part of our suffering. And so this is what we were talking about when we would go around the schools. And it would go really simple. It would say, how many of you all have heard about Trayvon Martin? And the entire room would raise their hand. And his death, his murder, opened a crevice in people's consciousness, and we were able to begin a conversation with young people who generally weren't talking about movement, generally weren't talking about the BS that we live every day, but for some reason, Trayvon was an alarm clock for a lot of folks. And we were able to start building a ragtag group of people who would do direct action and who would just do whatever to talk about the bullshit that was going on and that's been going on. And like any movement moment, what was once invisible was now invisible to more people. And we had an opportunity to make some new friends and to build something that we thought and still do think was beautiful and is beautiful. Our slogan at the time was "Be the Power." Don't fight the power, be the power. We were never afraid of power. We were power hungry, and we thought we were righteous in that. And we knew we had to build a powerful organization in order to affect the changes, the visionary changes and transformation that we wanted to see in the world and in Florida. We had no funding, and we weren't trying to be anything but what we wanted to be. Nobody could tell us what to do. Sometimes we would want to do the thing that people told us to do, and we wouldn't do it because someone told us to do it. It wasn't the best strategy, but we were serious about our sovereignty, our autonomy, our ability to own our path, our mistakes, our good things, our failures, our successes. And we were committed to organizing and building our organization and the movement, though we were woefully underprepared to do so. We were the bad news bears in a lot of ways. We had some people who were amazing in their own walks of life and had some organizers on our team. Some of our co-founders were organizers of Working Families Party, Nalini Stamp, people who had sat in Zuccotti Park and helped to build the Occupy movement. And we've talked about the continuity of movement, that Occupy didn't just implode and everybody scattered, but they went into other movements and continued, just as people from Troy Davis and people from Gina Six and Katrina and all of these movements that were flashes in the pan really were a part of the iteration that Melissa talked about. So we were catapulted to national prominence when, after a man was found not guilty for a murder, we decided to take over the capital of Florida for 31 days and 30 nights. What followed was a time of great promise and great peril. I'm telling this story because it's really indicative of a lot of the organizations that have started specifically around 2010 up until now. We asked the country at that point, can we dream together? Everyone was buying our shirts. We brought an energy to the cause, a cultural awareness that made people happy and excited, and people wanted to be a part. But what follows is a part that I get a little bit emotional about. Because what followed, quite frankly, is what happens to a lot of people in organizations at this time. When you do a cool thing that you knew was right and you had to do it, but the entire country then decides that you are the vanguard of the revolution. And that you are the next Dr. King or Malcolm X or whomever you want to be, just do that next. And your organization is the newest iteration of what we've seen before. And this is a debilitating position to be in as an organization that started a year before and was just doing what they thought was right. There was some analysis in there, and I'll talk about that, some genius in there, some creativity in there. But this group of young people was not prepared to become the head of the new revolutionary liberation movement for all people. And it's indicative of where we are in celebrity culture, in social media culture, and in nonprofit culture. And for better or for worse, we all were a part of the feeding frenzy. We weren't just a victim. We began to believe that quite possibly we could be the vanguard of the revolution, that quite possibly every action that we continue to do will be the crucial action that destroyed capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy in the state of Florida. And it was really hard. That period of time is marked by great confusion. You lose a lot of people who you thought you would keep around forever. You begin to contort yourself, whether you like it or not, to the whims of a rabid celebrity culture. You begin to create plans for actions that will follow up a great freshman effort with a dynamic sophomore album. You don't want to hit the sophomore slump, and so you begin to create things that really don't consider the community or yourselves. You just want to create something that people will like and follow. You begin to look at other organizations not as allies or people that you should think are doing amazing work, but people who may be trying to siphon off a little bit of not just the funding, but the mantle of this fictional torch. And it is a really fucked up time to be in. And we used to say, there's only one thing worse than a lack of opportunity, and it's an abundance of opportunity sometimes, where every person wants a piece of you. Everyone wants to hear your voice. Everyone wants you on their conference call. The entire movement spends their entire day saying, "No, I'm here. I was on mute," all day. Right? That's literally the revolution is spent on mute, running errands, and being like, no, I'm still here. And so it's also a period marked with you not being able to decide your next move. You never extending the invitation. You always accepting the invitation, which is always an honor, right? We were invited into some spaces and some meetings, into some rooms, which, amazing. But you're not able to really be the captain of your own ship. Or even let the right people who should be the captain of your ship into that rightful place. Whew, that was a hard place. That was a hard time. And most organizations don't make it out of there. And the story begins after that. Well, what happened to the Dream Defenders? Well, they weren't really trying to build an organization. Well, they didn't really play well with others. That's what the nonprofit, the tables say. They they were more concerned with action than with doing the work that we wanted them to do. And you begin to lose control over your future completely. It becomes at the whim of other people who created the ethos, and either they dehumanized you in both ways. They made you into a god and a pauper at the same time, blessed you with great wealth and took the wind right out of your sails, all in the same breath. And we lose a lot of organizations like that. We lose a lot of movement moments like that when we rush. We rush to the greatness, the creativity, the love. We're out of the place where we don't know we were great and we can't say we were doing some cool stuff. But did we deserve the entire world to label you something that they never knew you wanted? No. And then for that world to then move on to the next shiny thing a year later in Ferguson, it was an illuminating moment to be able to watch the same figures who had said you were the greatest thing ever, then move on to a new shiny penny, a new person whose blood spilled in the streets, a new hashtag, a new everything. And so what we came to understand was that we really needed to evolve our organization and really become the organization that we seek to be. And that's the place where we are now. We've spent the better part of 1 year in deep reflection. Someone mentioned yesterday the Grace Lee Boggs documentary where she said, she felt like our movement was more concerned with movement and activity and activism and less concerned with reflection. And reflection it hurts. It is a painful process, right? To look in the mirror and acknowledge whom you really are and whom you really are not. And to be able to call attention even to the praise that you have received and realize that is the intoxicating element that has sent you off your way. You're now driving under the influence of some bullshit. So we where we are now is a place that I think we all are very proud of, right? And it's a place still that's pretty confusing. We literally have like 8 processes moving at one time where we're trying to figure out the DNA of the organization. We're trying to figure out how to do quality leadership development and leadership identification, how to build dynamic teams, how to use technology as a supplement but not a crutch to all of that work, how to build an organization that is not built on patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism, the very things we're trying to fight, how to build an organization that isn't reflective of that. And we're trying to do all of that while still having an organization. We couldn't take a retreat and go somewhere and chill out. And we took a break from social media, and we said because that was a part of our sickness. I think it's a part of a national sickness in some parts of the country and the movement. And we said, look, we got to take a break from social media. And we're thinking about new ways of organizing. How does our work heal? How do we do work that doesn't just heal the communities that we're working in, but is healing to us? So we don't have to take breaks per se for the work, for self-care. But the work that we do is feeding to us. And the organization that we're a part of is feeding and healing to us. And so we don't have to take so many days off or weeks off or years off from the movement. How do we fight? What are the ways in which we fight? And I'll elevate that when I talk about some of the questions, but what does fighting really look like? It doesn't always look like shutting it down. It doesn't always look like the thing. I know, I'm with you. It doesn't always look like the things that always get the likes. What does fighting look like? We're talking about what is building. We know very well how to destroy, but what does building look like? And how is that a part of our cultural and organizational DNA? How do programs fit into our work? We're an organization, and I think most of us to some degree, I know I came up just enamored with the Black Panthers, right? And even as I learned more about how crazy most of them Individually were some of the more notable people. I think the organization as a whole was made up of very sane, very smart people, but y'all know I'm talking about Eldridge, and it's just crazy. And so, how do programs and how does that fit into our organizational DNA? How does education fit into our organizational DNA? Not just what we teach, but how we teach, and what is that like? And these are the questions, some of the questions that we're warring with. Internationalism, and how does that inform our work? One of our co-founders is Palestinian American. And we went to Palestine at the beginning of the year. And so it informs a lot of our analysis around prisons on a very surface level, right? It's the same company that's operating those prisons that's operating the prisons in Florida. So on that level, it's very clear. But on a deeper level, how do we talk about gentrification as occupation? Right, as the same thing we see in Palestine, communities going and building in places that aren't theirs, and we talk about that as occupation, but we have a more genteel word for it here. How do we shift culture? All the elements of culture. When we talk about culture, it's just a amorphous term, right? We can't touch it and we can't feel it, but it's actually elements that make up culture. And Melissa mentioned some of them: language, family structure, economics, social mores, church, government structures. All of these make up and reinforce a narrative that says every single day that the people in this room should be on the margins and should be spit out and should be dead. And how do we reframe that? And when we talk about shifting the culture, are we able to deploy organizers who say, hey, I want to build a campaign around changing language? You ask the undocumented community how much changing language has been able to shift the milieu on the policies that you can't say illegal anymore without you getting attacked. Right? And so language is a very important frontier that why wouldn't we embrace a full-on campaign around language and shifting language? I only have 5 minutes. We have a men's circle. We're building a sister circle, a women's circle, right? A women's faction that looks at the elements of our organization and attacks patriarchy on a number of levels, and embeds that into the cultural DNA of our organization and the way that we work. So just moving on, I would like to talk about some of the questions that we're asking, because those were just subjects, and maybe we can talk about them during Q&A, or maybe tonight over spades. We're trying to do spades tonight, if anybody trying to do spades. Okay. Well, actually, we couldn't do them over spades. It'd get too real. Okay, what is the role of art and music? Okay. Just for example, some of the things that Dream Defenders has done that people thought was like cool and cute because we were young and we were cool was actually the source of great like analysis, right? We don't just choose chants because they get you hype. It's actually some thought that goes into everything that we've been able to create, even the shirts. Some of our chants, Whose World Is This? A Nas song, right? A classic Nas song came about during a time where when we were in the Capitol, right? And people were actually negotiating whether this space and whether this state actually belonged to us. Whose really was it? And so it talked about claiming and reclamation. Never Loved Us, a Drake song, right? He said he had something else. He said something never loved, motherfuckers never loved us. That was the song. And we said that came about during a time when people were talking about state violence like it was something new. And we were saying, no, this country never loved us. It never was made for us, right? We have a chant that we'll maybe do sometime where right now it's from a Future and Drake song. It's called What a Time to Be Alive, right? And this is coming during a time when the entire movement, to me, seems to only talk about death, right? The entire timeline 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you had to scour the internet to see a video of a death, and now it's at the touch of your fingertips. And it's good to elevate what was once invisible to now visibility, but there comes a numbing effect that comes with death, a dark cloud, a depression, a despair that comes with only talking about lives mattering when it comes to people dying. And so we're talking about what a time to be alive. And so we're turning that on its head. Reclamation of space, of language, of our story, stories of our names. We got people, I changed my name. We got people that rename the city they're in. They don't call it Gainesville, they call it Godsville. And so it's about reclaiming those things. What does it mean to be human? And how does that inform our work? A human rights frame. So we're not talking about civil rights, right? We're not talking about American rights, but inalienable rights that are given to human beings, and human beings should be entitled to them. The discussion between meeting people where they are and leading by example, and not fetishizing either one too much, not being too self-righteous, and then also not, you can't let people just come in and say some crazy stuff in all your meetings and say, oh, we're just meeting people where they are. You gotta, so what is the, I think, what is the balance between that, and how do we, and we were talking about this, and we were talking about it, Melissa, how do you work in a dual space where that people are conditioned right for fellowship? Right? So this is a weird thing that we're thinking about. People are conditioned for fellowship, right? And being led astray. And how do you build in a leadership that is, how do you resist the temptation to just say, well, no, we're going to lead them the right way, and then build, it's just conversations around leadership, and especially when people are being led astray. And I think we're a generation away from a generation of people being raised to follow as shepherds and sheep. And so how do you use that knowledge of the material conditions of people to then turn it on its head? So in essence, say, look at me, look at me, look at me. Okay, now don't look at me. Now do not look at me. How do you do that? And is that even a valid thing to be thinking about? How do we embody movement as a lifestyle and not just work? So when you go to my house or when you go to anything, you understand that, this is not just because you don't become a member of Dream Defenders, but it becomes a lifestyle in our value system. And how do you do that every day? How do we engage? Okay, how do we engage in a moment of heavy emphasis on nationalism and black nationalism? This is a conversation that I'm willing to have with folks in here who may consider themselves nationalism, and a historical precedent for nationalism, not just black nationalism, that it reaches a point, right, where it does not, I feel like it does not grow the movement, right? And where and how does that fit? Identity politics and the perverted way that it's used in some spaces to create safe spaces around just trauma and not places around conflict and shit we thinking, right? Technology, how to use technology, and the numbness that comes with technology, as I mentioned, the nonprofit complex. So these are things that we're thinking about and considering as we're evolving the organization, and also trying to be a good partner in the movement ecosystem, and trying to really be able to not just play well with others, but not just know our lane, but really stand for something and people know when and what they can call us for. So I want to end it in my comments, with a poem that by Martin Espada called "Imagine the Angels of Bread." This is the year that squatters evict landlords, gazing like admirals from the rail of the roof deck, or levitating hands in praise of steam in the shower. This is the year that shawled refugees deport judges who stare at the floor at their swollen feet as files are stamped with their destination. This is the year that police revolvers, stove hot, blister the fingers of raging cops, and nightsticks splinter in their palms. This is the year that dark-skinned men lynched a century ago return to sip coffee quietly with the apologizing descendants of their executioners. This is the year that those who swim the borders undertow and shiver in boxcars are greeted with trumpets and drums at the first railroad crossing on the other side. This is the year that the hands pulling tomatoes from the vine uproot the deed to the earth that sprouts the vine. The hands canning tomatoes are named in the will that owns the bedlam of the cannery. This is the year that the eyes, stinging from the poison that purifies toilets, awaken at last to the sight of a rooster-loud hillside, pilgrimage of immigrant birth. This is the year that cockroaches become extinct, that no doctor finds a roach embedded in the ear of an infant. This is the year that the food stamps of adolescent mothers are auctioned like gold doubloons, and no coin is given to buy machetes for the next bouquet of severed heads in coffee plantation country. If the abolition of slave manacles began as a vision of hands without manacles, then this is the year. If the shutdown of extermination camps began as imagination of a land without barbed wire or the crematorium, then this is the year. If every rebellion begins with the idea that conquerors on horseback are not many-legged gods, that they too are drowned in if plunged in the river, then this is the year. So may every humiliated mouth, teeth like desecrated headstones, fill with the angels of bread.